Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session of Security and Sandwiches, hosted by Stone Security. My name is Adam, and I get to be your tour guide today. A couple shameless plugs. Check out our website. I've got that pulled up right here. We're looking at it. It's a great resource for what's happening with Stone, information about Stone if you don't necessarily know who we are, upcoming events, any news. You can see the awards that we've got there. And also, check out our YouTube channel. This is a live session that we're running. We are, doing this via Teams. However, we do edit it and get it uploaded to our YouTube channel so that people can watch it and use the content here after the session as well. So if you ever can't attend a future session, or if you need to come back and revisit what we did, refresh your memory, there's a whole playlist here of all of the Security and Sandwiches videos that we've done over the last 2 years. And so check that out, and there's a really good resource there and a lot of good content. On that note, don't forget to, while you're there, subscribe so that you see when we post new videos or updates. That way you'll get to get those as quick as possible. All right, we're gonna jump right in now to our topic today. Today we're gonna talk about notifications from Milestone. And this is something that we get a lot of questions about, and there are some really great ways to get notifications out of Milestone in a couple different methods too, but it may not be clear the right way to go depending on your situation. So hopefully we can present some of what the options are, some of the pros and cons of those options, and go over some scenarios that may be beneficial to you. So if you have questions or chats, please drop those into the comment here in the Teams meeting, and both myself and Patrick monitor that, and we'll try to get those addressed as we go through. Don't worry about interrupting, just drop them in there as we go, and we'll cover them as they come up. All right. So the first thing I want to go over is inside of Milestone's XProtect, there are two main ways and kind of some out-of-the-box methods that you could get a notification out of Milestone. The most common way is with an email. Milestone can generate an email and send that email to a single recipient, a list of recipients, or a distribution group, really whatever's needed there. Another method is, and this is new to Milestone, I think probably within the last maybe year and a half. I believe this came out 2024, early 2024, but it's webhooks. So Milestone has the ability to send event data by webhook to any webhook receiver. And then kind of some of those maybe out of the box notification methods would be things like using a Siren strobe, a D4100 to give us that strobe and the lights. You can do an audible alarm, you can play an audio clip, and with the new Access network displays, that's the speaker with the little display built into it. Network clock, I guess you could call it as well, because they do have clock functionality. We can also display messages on those as part of that. Now, I have one. I have not yet played with it. That is something I hope to tackle when I get back from GSX next week. But that is a new feature, a new notification method that we have ability to as well. Now, people always ask, can I send a text message? And the answer is yes, but not directly. There's two ways you could generate a text message to send it. One is we're going to send an email. Okay, so Milestone sending an email to the carrier's email to SMS conversion tool. And that's going to be, basically it's your phone number and then each carrier has a unique address, to follow the rest of that email. So for example, I think Verizon's is, so your phone number @VZText, or at least that's what it used to be. So you can Google those. You can find out what those are for your carrier, and that is how that's one way to generate an email and send it as a text message. Now the challenge is that conversion that the carrier does is not always very fast, and so one, emails can sometimes be a little slow, but two, that conversion can sometimes be a little bit slow, so your text message may be delayed more than you would want. The other way is there are services that actually will take a webhook and convert it to an SMS. All right, and so that's one method there as well. Now there are some general pros and cons between emails and webhooks. And before we start looking at how we set these up and how they function and run, I want to kind of just go over a high level of what those differences are. So one, webhooks are generally going to be faster than an email. And part of that is because an email, depending on your organization's policies, has to be screened through email filters, junk filters, spam filters. Some organizations even have policies where emails on the inbound side are held for like 5, 10, or 15 minutes before that they are released to be sent out. And so an email can have, depending on your organization, considerable delay to it. A webhook is generally not going to have that kind of delay. All right, but a webhook may not include the information or the type of information that you need when you're talking about what's coming into your milestone, what's coming out of your milestone to your notification. And the downside there as well is that in its current implementation, these webhooks, the data included in these webhooks is not customizable. The webhook protocol does support embedded images, but Milestone's implementation of webhooks does not embed images. So if you need an image in your notification, then a webhook is not going to be the way that you want to go. If you want an image, an email is probably your best bet. But if you just want that really fast notification of this event happened, maybe followed up by the email, maybe you tag team and both of them work. Webhooks, we'll look at how these are formatted a little bit in the messaging versus the emails and go over that. But emails can leverage the milestone rule name that triggered that email as well. So you could see benefit in that notification having that customizable name. And then of course emails we can embed images in. Okay, so first, while we're talking about the differences between them, I'm going to show you some of the differences here. So on the right hand side, this is a web page. It's just webhook.site. This is not affiliated to Stone. I'm not necessarily promoting it. This is just a tool that I've used in the past to test webhooks. And so it will generate a custom URL for you, and you plug that URL into your milestone to send webhooks to this address. And what we get, depending on the event, so every event type is going to have some different information. This one that we're looking at right here, this is a door forced open. So this, in addition to my milestone information, is going to have some additional access control information in it, because my access control from OnGuard is integrated into my milestone. So we have event headers, we've got IDs, we've got a timestamp, we've got the event type. So this is an access control system event. The name of it, this came from the GTC warehouse roll-up door. And the event type, embedded is this name, is OnGuard door forced open. We have the source, so the name of the source was the warehouse roll-up door. And then we get, it's an access control, that's the ID for it, parent objects, parent ID, object ID, a whole bunch of different IDs, message ID, IDs on the doors, and so if you want to really get into custom scripting and coding, generally all the information you need in relation to what the event was and all of the objects surrounding that event. It's all here if you can, format your JSON script to parse this the way that you want. Okay, and we'll look just very briefly at where that parsing happens, depending, at least in context of Microsoft Teams. Okay, so you can see that there's a lot of info here. It's not easily readable. It's not very user friendly in terms of, in comparison to an email. All right, but that's an access control one. You'll see some other ones here that we've gotten coming in. So here was a door forced open, a lot of the same information. Here was another door forced open, another door forced open. This was me testing on my lab door before the start of the meeting. Here's one that just came in. You guys probably saw that pop up on the left-hand side, where we had the warehouse roll-up door forced open as well. So, all right, so that's the webhook. That's the format, the structure of the raw webhook data. If we look at the email, now this email's formatted in a way that I like. You can always update and customize this format to something that matches better your needs. But the email has a subject. So for me, the subject I picked was just give me the name of the rule. So the name of my rule is notification door forced open. And then we get this email notification was triggered by, here's the name of the rule again, or sorry, this is the device that triggered the notification. So it's the GTC warehouse roll-up door. And then it tells us where the attachments are coming from. Then we have the message itself. So in the message, what I do is I will use the predefined variables that are available to me, and I will put I'll put the variable name and then the variable. And so here we have the rule. The rule name was notification door forced open. The device was GTC warehouse roll-up door. The hardware, okay, so some of these have device elements, some of them have hardware elements, some have one or the other, some have both. So here, this is telling me the camera that our attachment is going to be coming from. The recording server this is attached from. So if you have multiple recording servers or even recording servers at different site, that could be helpful information or context to tell you where this event is coming from, what it pertains to. The access control, so if this is coming from an access control, what is the component there? And then the timestamp, when did this event happen? Okay, so a lot of the same or similar information that we get between the two, between the email and the webhook, but still some differences in that. And then of course in the emails, we can embed the screenshots or the still images that we capture from that event. And so this one, over here in the corner behind the ladders, there's a roll-up door, your typical open, close, stop buttons on the wall. And when somebody uses those buttons to open and close the doors, the access control system isn't being notified of that. And so, at least with the way that I have it wired. And so the access control system is going, hey, this door, I didn't know that this door is supposed to be opening. It is. And so it throws that as a door forced. All right, so here's an email. Now, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and you'll see another email. This is the same timestamp, so that 10/11/35. Here it is again, 10/11/35. This is the same door forced open event. Now, this is maybe an area where emails have a little bit of a drawback, a con. And that's because when we have a device, an event that has multiple sources for the camera images that we're sending, we're going to get multiple emails. An email can contain multiple images or a single or multiple images from one camera source, but if you have an event that has multiple camera sources, then you'll get multiple emails. And that's maybe a little annoying, but I do understand why Milestone has structured it that way, and it all comes down to this hardware level right here. The attachment is coming from this hardware. If we come up, the attachment here is coming from this hardware. Those are different hardware elements, and so they get embedded in, they get sent as different emails. Okay, so here's how that here's how the webhook comes into Teams. So we take the raw data, and then we're going to format that data using a JSON script to basically lay out the data in a way that we care about. One, lay out the data we care about, and two, structure that in a way that is more human readable. And so we'll walk through how we set those up and what that looks like. I just wanted to show you kind of an overview of the differences between the webhook and the email and what we get between the two of them. All right, so let's jump over to that. Let's look at that now. Let's come to our management client. In the management client, we have a series of rules. We'll look at the rules in a minute. Let's start with the webhooks, because I think that's going to be the quicker one to begin with. So again, starting in 2024, I believe it was R1. It may have come tail end of 2023, but Milestone added webhook capabilities. And so what you do is you define a webhook. We'll add a new, and it's simply going to be, give it a name, and the URL, the address where we are sending this data stream to. And so that's going to be something, HTTP, HTTPS, and then whatever that URL is. Now, the logical question is, where does that URL come from? All right. It's going to come from whatever the system is you're sending the data to. So in this case, this webhook.site, it generated a URL for me, and I can now I'll take that URL, I send information to it, I'll scroll up to the top, maximize this top window. So here's the URL that I'm using. As soon as I close this window and terminate the session, this URL is gone. And so it's a https://webhook.site with the custom ID for this individual session. So again, this is just a good testing tool. This wouldn't be something you use in production. In production, though, maybe you use something more like Teams or Slack. And so both have capabilities, and other messaging platforms out there as well, have capabilities of ingesting webhooks as a messaging source. In Teams, this is pretty straightforward, but there's also a little complexity to it as well. And this may depend on your Teams licensing, so I can't speak to that. I'm not the Microsoft 365, admin or expert, but on your Teams channel, and what I have here is I've set up a channel, a group, with a channel specific for my for my Milestone messages. So all my Milestone messaging is coming into a particular channel. This could be shared between multiple users, and so you could have your entire security team getting these notifications. You could have your IT team getting these notifications. Whatever groups you want to add to those channels, that's entirely within the team structure of how you build that. But to get the webhook function, what you're going to do, come up to these three dots that tell you your channel options, and there's this section called workflows. And what we're going to do is we add a workflow to this channel. All right, now I've got this already pulled up down here. So when you do this, there is a wizard you can walk through, but basically this is where you will end up, is you get this workflow of when a Teams webhook request is received. All right, it will generate a URL for you. So here's the URL, and it's just this big, long, really custom string of text. Okay, so when I receive data at this endpoint, what am I going to do with that data? Okay, let me expand out that section. So there's several options on what you can do here. The one that I found that works best so far, in at least my implementation of it, is post card in a chat or channel. And so we're going to say post as. Now we could post as the flow bot. The flow is that workflow that we're talking about. Or you can select a different user, whatever you need to do to make that function in your environment. Okay, now where are we posting it? We're going to post it to a channel. We're going to post it, all right, what team are we posting to? So we select our team. Here I've just got the GTC alerts team. And then the channel, okay, I've got alerts coming from your 6 into its own channel. On guard, I can do another channel. Milestone is coming into this channel. You could structure it not based on software. You could structure it based on the groups. Maybe this is my security team versus my InfoSec team versus my, the group managing, responding to a camera that's down. All right, so that's the easy part. Now, the part where complexity comes in is this adaptive card section. You have to basically give it a JSON structure on how Teams is going to interpret the raw data that comes in from the webhook. So this one I did, I'll just in full honesty, I used ChatGPT to say, help me create this JSON structure. Here's an example of my raw webhook, what it looks like. Here's what I want it to look like in my message. And it built this for me. I tested it, revised it a couple times, and this is where I ended up. But if you are somebody who's really good at writing JSON, or somebody who's really good at writing JSONs, like most of these would be your web developer type guys, right? They can help build this out as well. And so this is a key part. It's not going to work without this part. This is it's what takes our raw webhook data, which is this big long list of custom IDs, with some friendly names in there along the way. It's going to take that data and convert it to the more readable data we see here. So getting that right is critical. But it's where you get your flexibility and ability to customize what that looks like. So hopefully, fingers crossed, sometime in the future, we see Milestone add capability of embedding images into the webhook. I think that would be amazing to be able to do. We'll have to wait and see how that unfolds as this continues to grow and develop. So, but that's the flow. So you create the flow. The flow gets assigned, basically is saying, here's my external trigger, my external endpoint, any webhook that hits that, we're going to send it to this, post it to this channel, this team, and here's how we're going to parse and structure the data so that we can make that readable for us. All right. So let me jump out of there. Now that's part of that. So we looked at the webhook. We're getting that URL. We put that in. All right. You can secure it with a token. There's API version 1. I'm assuming we'll see different API versions coming as this updates. So that's how the webhook gets defined in Milestone. Everything else is now coming back to a rule. All right, so we'll pause on the webhook thread there for a moment, because now I want to look at how the emails are set up. Once we're done there, we'll look at the rules and how the rules are structured. So one of the first steps you're going to need to do in setting up an email is some systems that leverage emails provide a mailbox by just as part of the service of that system. Milestone does not do that. And so to send an email with Milestone, your Milestone system has to have a mailbox that it can send from. And so that is configured under Tools and Options. And this sometimes takes, 10, 15 seconds to open, so bear with me while it opens. All right, in our tabs across the top, there's a tab called Mail Server. All right, now I have my information in here. If you're watching YouTube, this will be blurred out. But we need a sender email address, a mail server address. So this is typically going to be something like smtp dot whatever. The port, is it encrypted? Does it require login? And then the username and password to log in. And so this is telling Milestone, this is where you relay or where you send a message from. All right, and that's critical. You can't do anything else with emails without that. Once you have that, then you want to come over to notification profiles. Now we're actually going to define what my email is, what it looks like. So I have two of them here. One is going to send directly to me, and I use this for different notifications or different things. The other one is sending to my team's email. Now I'll show you that really quick as well. So let me come back to Teams. In that same drop down where we got the workflows, just above it, there's a get email address. And so you can get an email address for that specific Teams channel. Now there's some settings here you need to be aware of. When you set this up, the default is going to be only members of this team can send to this email, meaning it's going to turn away or reject anything else that comes in. You could set this up to say anyone can send emails to this address. You probably don't want to do that though, just because of the bots and everything that, the world that we live in today. You'll probably want to set it to at least scope to a domain. So only emails sent from these domains are going to make it through into my channel. So I just added the Bearcom domain and the Stone domain. And so any email coming from those addresses is going to come through into our Teams channel. And that's it. That's all. As far as setting up Teams to receive an email, that's all you got to do. It's very similar for Slack, or at least it was when I used Slack last about 6 years ago. So that's where we put our recipient. We're going to send the notifications to our Teams channel email. My subject, you could type your own subject. This is the subject. Or you could say, this is a camera offline notification. And then you could say, give me the device name of the camera that's offline. These blue hyperlinked lines here, these texts down here in this section, these are variables that you can insert into your notification profile. And so we can say put that in the subject, or we can say put it in the body. So in this one, what I like to do was just I'll revert it back, discard changes, yes. So I just like to use my rule name, and then when I structure my rules, I bear that in mind that this is what's going to show. So, but you can set that how you want. Again, so in the message body, the rule, and then the variable, the device, and then the variable, the hardware, the variable, the recording server, the variable, the access control, the variable, and then the time and the variable there. I generally put a couple blank lines, 2 or 3 blank lines at the end of it, just to create some separation in the message between what Milestone is going to append to the email and the attachments. You can also, if you want to put in for example, maybe like a set of instructions, follow this set of instructions to resolve the issue, or however you want to structure that for your purposes. It used to be that the return, a new line, the return key didn't actually work in the emails. They have since fixed that, and so now it used to be that even though I format it like this, it comes in as an email just as all one long continuous line. So, but now, at least on the version I'm at, 2025 R2, I don't know when they fix this, but the return line is actually going to be a return in the email, so you'll get each of those pieces of information on a new line. All right, time between emails. If we have an email that gets sent, how long do we want to require the system to wait before we send another email? If you have a system go offline, or a server go offline, or a network switch drop offline, any of those scenarios will cause more than one camera to go down, then you might get bombarded by maybe 50 or 100 emails. You can slow those down. Maybe your mail server has a rate limit to it, and you don't want to exceed that rate limit, or else it'll start getting flagged as spam. You can use this as a tool to work around that. Okay, data. What data do we want to include in our email? Do we want to include images? Do we want to include an AVI? AVI I would be careful with, because emails have size limitations to them. Most email boxes range anywhere between 10 meg and 20, 30 meg. And that is not consistent from one organization to the next. So just be aware of that. You don't want to attach too large of a video clip, or it won't come through. It'll get stripped out, or your email will get rejected. The other thing there is that you notice it says include AVI. So before Milestone can send the email, it has to transcode that video into the AVI to attach it to the email. So if speed is your goal, don't attach the video, because it's going to delay it by probably upwards of a minute. Okay, or maybe longer. Just depends on what you're doing. But you can check that box. You can set the pre-buffer and the post-buffer, time before the event, time after the event, and the frame rate of the video that you're going to receive. For me, I think images are probably sufficient. It's going to be at least enough to give me some context, and then I'm going to now jump into my Milestone system to see what's going on after that. So, number of images. This is the goal. The goal is to attach 3 images. You can make it 5 images. You can make it 1 image. And the time between images, 1 second, 2 seconds. So this is 1 millisecond. That's actually not, probably should do, we'll say 100 milliseconds. So set that where you're comfortable with. It may take a little bit of testing, depending on, even, for example, maybe what you're looking for. A door forced open. If you just want to grab them on the one side of the door, then maybe it's 1 image. If you want to grab a sequence, maybe it's going to be 5 images timed 1 or 2 seconds apart, so that you kind of get more of a story. Once Milestone has its images, it will embed those into the email and send it. Now, there are 2 options on how that gets attached. There's this last checkbox here that says embed images in an email. Leaving that box checked, what it does is it puts the image in line with the body of the email. With this unchecked, it's going to attach the file to the email as an attachment. The right one is going to depend on your use case. Teams will ingest both if that's what you're doing. So I didn't see a difference between embedding with an email I didn't see the difference between an attachment versus embedded into the body in how Teams responded to that attachment, into that image. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it as an attachment. Now, if you're getting that on your phone, like that's a message being sent to you and you're looking at it on your phone, one is going to be, I see the message and then I have to click on something to open, download and load and then view the attachment. Embedding it may make that a little bit quicker. Maybe it's a convenience factor, because now it'll just be right there and all you got to do is scroll down a little bit. So that's the differences there. Now, if you have a rule that is sending an email to a notification profile and you get the email but there's no attachments, that's usually because there was no recorded video with the associated hardware device that occurred at that point in time, at the same time the event occurred. So just that's something to be aware of, is you may want to add to your rule the, hey, start recording on this device as well, in addition to sending the email. That would at least guarantee, or more better guarantee, that you're going to have the recordings there to attach in. Otherwise, what you can do, and this is kind of my preference, I split up my notifications completely separate from the rest of the rule. So, for example, I have rules for door forced opens and how Milestone is going to respond in the environment to that event happening. But then I have separate rules for the notification aspect of it. And that just gives me better control, greater control over how I respond in different situations or different scenarios. It also means that if I need to modify the notification, it's easier to do because I can just change the notification part of it and not the rest of the rule. And so 2 rules can be kicked off by the same event, or multiple rules can be triggered by the same event. And this also makes it easier to keep track of what is triggering the notifications. So if you have, for some reason, a notification that all of a sudden starts spamming you, you don't have to go through and try to figure out, is like, okay, does this rule have a notification element in it? Nope. Does this one have a it's easier to find the rule. So this is, generally speaking, this is a structure that I like to use with rules, because it's just going to make it easier to, 1, know what the rule does, and 2, find the relevant rules when you need to make updates or changes. Okay, let's dig in now to some of the scenarios, because I think the scenarios will be what helps us understand how these are built into the rules. So the very first scenario I want to point at is, I want to know when my recording server goes offline, when any of my recording servers go offline. All right. To build this, I have one built here, but we're going to start off with a new rule. So in this case, I would say notification. What is it? Recording server offline. Now, I'm just going to put a 2 on there because I already have a rule with this name, and it's going to throw an error if I try to build the same thing. You can give it a description. Send an email notification to I promise I can type better than this, but anytime I'm doing this in front of a group, I always type weird. Anyway, okay, we get the gist of it. None of us are perfect. Send an email notification to administrators when a recording server goes offline. What is the event that's going to trigger this? Now, there is not an apparent event. There's not a clear one to pick if you don't know what you're looking for. And I've struggled with this in the past too. I think even if you go back and look at the last video where we tried to show a recording server going offline, I hadn't yet found the right event to do that. Sometimes these the event list can take a minute to pull up. So even though it looks like my Milestone system might be freaking out, it is working normally. So I'm going to expand this out just a little bit, make this easier to read. My apologies if the text is a little difficult to read on the Teams meeting. This is where the YouTube recording is going to come into play, because it'll be nice and clear in 4K on YouTube, but sometimes Teams can make text on high resolution screens a little blurry. Okay, so in here we have several different device types. We've got hardware. That's going to be like the hardware that we attach to the recording server. We have devices. A device is going to be like the camera, the microphone, the speaker, the input, the output, the metadata that are attached to a hardware device. We've got external events, things like predefined events of different, system level things, generic events, things that we define within Milestone, user-defined events, again, things that we can define within Milestone. Recording servers. All right, this looks like it's going to have something that I need here. Well, archive available, not finished, database archiving. These are all, if you look at this list, this all has to do with the storage of our recording server. Database repair, database full, storage unavailable. Okay, failover. All right, great. Failover. Failover started, failover stopped. Well, what if you don't have a failover? Or what if your failover isn't working for some reason in this particular event? These 3-4 things here are specifically related to the failover status. And if failover is not operating correctly, we may not get the failover started message to know that our recording server is offline. So that's not the best one to do that with either. It is an option. Might be good to know that failover has started. So maybe you do this as a separate rule. Failover started, tell me when these failovers start, tell me when they stop. Instead, to know that my recording server is offline, specifically this is the event, recording server is offline, if you come to System Monitor, I believe it's under Server, this Service Available Critical is the one that I have found to be the most reliable. So again, I want to know when my recording server stops. I'm going to use System Monitor, Server, Service Available Critical. All right, when I hit OK, now I get this selection of what are my sources. What are we scoping this to? So you can say all servers and have one rule that covers your event server, your log server, your LPR server, your recording servers. You could do that. Or if you just want to make this rule just unique to the recording servers, then you can come in, you can add in the individual recording servers. I really wish, and this doesn't make sense to me, I can say all servers, I can select that group and I can hit add, but I can't say recording servers and add that as a group. So there's a little bit of an inconsistency there. But I can just easily come and say, here's my recording servers. I can select the multiple if I need to, and I can add that in. The only downside to this is that if I add recording servers later on, I have to remember to come back and modify, update the rules to include those new recording servers, which is why I wish we could just say the recording servers group instead of having to select the individual items. So Milestone, if you're watching, there's something to update. All right, so perform an action on service available critical from my recording server or recording servers if you select multiple. Okay. When do I want to scope this within a time? Do I only care about this during business hours when I'm working? Maybe I don't care about it during business hours because I'll be on the property. Maybe I only want this notification when I'm at home. Okay, so outside selected time profile. Or you could define, specific start and end date and times. Maybe you only want this on Mondays. I don't know. So you have some conditions there that you can scope it down to a little bit further. Generally, though, I think for this rule, you're going to want to leave it open. So I'm going to click Next. Now, when this happens, what do we want to do? Again, this is just for the notification aspect of it. So notifications, generally you're looking for something like, you could create a bookmark. You could create a log entry. But send notification to profile, this is our email aspect. The more logical thing for it to say would be send email to profile. But send notification to profile. So we are going to select the profile. Here's my Teams GTC Milestone Alerts one that we looked at. Okay, now images and sound from recording device. So the options here are going to vary depending on what the triggering event is. The three that you'll mainly see are selected device, which means I have to select a specific device. Okay. which is not a great option if you want a general rule that's going to be triggered by multiple different items. For example, if I say this is 4 recording servers, then to select this device, I can't just say just this recording server. I'd have to say these devices, and that's not going to be on the recording server necessarily that is relevant to the event. So in some cases, you'll get the selected device. That's great for a one-off rule tied to a particular set of, to a particular device or particular, situations surrounding set devices. No device, which means I'm not going to get any attachments. The third option you'll see is verbiage, something like used triggering device or from metadata. We'll see that here in a minute when we look at some other examples. So in this case, no device, which means I'm not going to get any attachments. And that's it. That's the email. So I could click finish and be done. I don't necessarily need anything happening on the end. And in fact, you'll notice even if I say perform a stop action after, an event, we'd have to specify what that event is. You could say, if you wanted to go really specific, you could say service available normal, get the inverse of that rule. Then you'd have to scope it again to the devices. For simplicity, I'll just say time. We'll just say 1 second, or it could be 5 minutes. In most instances, the notification triggers, the notification actions aren't available as a step 5 stop action. For example, there is no send notification to profile. So it was right about here in the list. So we have move, PTZs, device output, start stop plugins. There isn't a notification. So I can't use one rule to give me a notification when an event starts and when an event stops. I have to break that into 2 separate rules. However, webhooks, I do have the ability to send a webhook on both the stop and the start. Webhooks are available for both. Okay. For this though, I'm not going to use a stop action, so we'll leave that as no action performed on rule end. And to show you the webhook part of it, this is just a simple checkbox. Send event information to webhook. We select it. Okay, where are we sending that information to? Now this I do love because you can do your device groups. So if you want to send it to multiple receivers at the same time, you can. Or you can just specify a single webhook to send that element to. And finish, there's the rule. So perform an action on service available critical from my recording server. When that happens, I'm sending a notification to the Teams email, and I'm sending images and sound from no device because there wasn't a way to scope it to the recording server as a device. And then the send event information to webhooks. We're going to do the all webhooks. That's the exact rule that I've got here just below it. So I'm going to leave that one disabled so we don't get instances of both. And now we're actually going to trigger this rule so that we can see it. I will actually do a stop on my recording server here. Pull that up. Now this will take a minute to stop. It's got a lot of cameras on it. So, but it is on the downside happening right now. Here's our webhook. That came pretty quick. Okay, you saw how fast that popped up. So here's that service available critical. Here's my recording server. We got the webhook that came in just as quick into Teams. So service available critical. Here's the recording server that it was relevant to. And then following that, now we have the email notification. So here's the rule name, notification, recording service offline. So when I'm looking at my phone, because it's after hours, just by default of when recording servers go offline, Murphy's Law, I can instantly see in my notification banner exactly what is happening. And then I can open the email and get the rest of the details. So that quick, that easy. That's my recording server went offline. Now, if we take that rule, modify it, set it up for the service available normal trigger, then we can get the restore, the notification on the restore of that. Okay, and again, if you've got questions, or if you want to know, hey, can we do this specific scenario, drop those into the chat and we'll look at them. All right, I'm just going to keep going down my list here. So recording server offline, that's a really common one we get. You can also set up that same rule relevant to the failover servers. So if you have failover servers and for some reason your failover is offline, then you can make it as a separate rule and scope it to the failovers instead of the recording server. Cameras. A lot of people want to know when their cameras go offline. Now, there are some great third-party tools that are plugins to Milestone that give you some really easy to set up, easy to configure, non-nuisance emails or notifications of when this happens. This is one that we do set up for people, and probably, I would say 5 out of 10 times, 6 out of 10 times within 6 months, I'm tired of getting these emails. I know these devices have issues. I just haven't been able to fix them yet. And so that rule, those emails start to get ignored, and then the rule just becomes annoying. And so it usually ends up getting turned back off. But Boring Toolbox is a great resource to get, some enhanced or improved this camera is offline email out of Milestone, notification out of Milestone. But today I'm going to show you how Milestone handles that within the entire, self-contained ecosystem of Milestone. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this duplicate rule just so I don't forget later. Now for this one, we're going to, from here on out, we're going to use the pre-built rules that I've looked at, that I built, and we'll look at them. We'll open them up and edit them. So what we want here is cameras offline. Now I'm going to go ahead and enable this rule and then hit save, and we'll edit it. And what we have here is, so a notification, cameras offline. So I'm using that name as my email subject. And then, sorry, a little sidetracked by thought. We can use this same notification profile for a lot of different things. If you can build it in a structure that you're going to get the information you want in that single email template. Because basically these notification profiles, these become templates for the email. The event happens, it populates the template with the information, the email sends out. If I wanted to have, for example, say notification cameras offline and then the name of the camera that went offline, if I wanted to make that part of the email subject, then I could create a second notification profile. It's more or less going to be a clone of this, the one that I have here. I would just be adding in that device variable into my subject line. And so you can have multiples of those. Just because I'm using one, don't take that as a limitation or anything. All right, so I've selected that notification profile. So perform an action on. Now this is where people tend to go the wrong direction on this. Is the triggering event. What are we using to trigger the event? So while this pulls up, Milestone has, as part of their user guides, and actually this one has been recently redone, and it's quite nice the way that they've done it now. I will drop this even into the chat so that you've got an easy link to that. This is an overview of the Milestone events and what events are available, and it explains the difference between a configurable event and a predefined event. Whether it's hardware or whether it's device. So, but just to kind of point out, highlight, hardware is from the perspective of we attach hardware to the recording server. So my hardware is going to be this device, this element, or the M4216 or the P3268. That's the hardware. The devices are the things underneath that. So the one or multiple cameras is a device. The microphone is a device. The metadata is a device. The inputs and the outputs are devices. If it has a speaker, there's that's its own device. So when you're thinking about how you build your rules in this, first you need to understand that there are differences in the triggers and what can be attached. So for example, if we say I want a communication error on the hardware, I can't attach then images to that email because the images come from the device, not the hardware. Okay, so if you want the image of this camera is offline, here's what Milestone saw right before it went offline, if those images are available, right? So in the scenario of somebody's throwing rocks or hitting my camera with a hammer, whatever it might be, I should have images because there's motion happening. Milestone should be recording at that point in time. Then you have to use the device. I can't use hardware. If I do hardware, there's no attachments because there's no association between the hardware and the device. Okay, so just know that's one limitation there. Another one, if I do hardware, okay, and we'll just mock this up. So I'll say communication error hardware. It changes the scoping mechanism. All right, and so scoping hardware, I get the list of recording servers. If you've got multiple recording servers, you'll get the list. There is no select all button, and this is really annoying to me. I have to come and select the individual hardwares that I want to generate an alert from, that I want the alert from if this event happens. To me, that's a real waste of time to have to come through and select all these. Now, you can be really fast. You can use your arrow key up and down and the space bar, and you can get it fast. But if I have, 2,000 cameras or even 200 cameras, I don't want to do that. That's annoying. All right. And then, we have also the limitation of the images and sound becomes a problem there. The other way to handle this also, though, comes with some caveats. So we'll look at those. But this is going to be the direction that we probably want to go more than the hardware. We want to look at the device. So wait for this to pop up in a moment here. Let me see if there's been any chats that I haven't seen yet. Okay, so device, predefined events, and communication error. This is what I want Milestone to use as the trigger, communication error. Now, when I get to the part where I scope that rule, now this looks more reasonable. Now I can come here to recording servers and it's the same thing. Here's my list of cameras. I can't do the recording server at this point, but we get to leverage our device groups. And I think this is really where this comes in handy. Now keep in mind, you can say all cameras, all microphones, all speakers, and all metadata. You could do that, but here's why you probably don't want to. If I have a camera that goes offline, maybe we'll say the P3268 goes offline. That hardware has a camera and a metadata and a speaker and a microphone. So I'm going to get from one device going offline, if I leave my rule structured like this, from one device going offline, I'm going to get 4 emails. For each of I'm going to get an email for the camera going offline, an email for the metadata going offline, an email for the microphone going offline, an email for the speaker going offline, any of the enabled devices are going to cause that to trigger. So don't do that. You're gonna hate it really fast. You can use the all cameras. Now, if you don't know, this all cameras with a device group, this is an automatic group that Milestone creates. It is literally every enabled camera in your system. All right. Oftentimes you'll see that we create, when we're configuring systems, we'll create a separate all cameras group because this default one, this automatic one, does not show up everywhere that we need it to. So we create our own. But this does not necessarily have every camera. And so if you or we are maintaining your device groups appropriately, they should be the same. You can also go a completely different route. If there's only a collection of cameras, maybe you're not worried about every camera across your entire campus going offline. Maybe you're only interested in cameras maybe surrounding your C-suites, maybe their offices or your admin building or your parking garage, whatever collection of cameras. You can build those into their own device group. You could build these into system, like a group called system groups. So the system groups, for example, I would say I would do another group under here called maybe notifications. And then I could say, here's my parking garage group. Here's my admin group. Here's whatever. So what I'm doing here is, for my case, I'm just going to say all cameras. You could come in and say, I only care about things in the lobby or in the warehouse. You can select one or multiple groups. So we'll say all cameras, add, and OK. Now, if you have some devices that don't have cameras, for example, I have some Access speakers here in our system that we use for notifications. They don't have a camera. So they're not going to be part of this all cameras group. What you can do for that, and I've done it here, but we'll just look at it now, is instead of build a second rule, so one for cameras offline, and then a second rule, maybe call it non-cameras, and then you'll select those devices. So mine, the ones that I have, they're all going to be speakers. Everything else has some kind of a camera, type device on it. But I just created a group called speaker only devices that could also be verbiaged as non-camera devices. And I would add that instead of my all cameras. So build that to your needs. Okay. All right. Once we have this trigger of communication error from all cameras, I want to send a notification to my Teams channel with the attached images. So here's that third option, use triggering device. Once I select that, it says images and sound from the device on which event occurred. All right, and then I'm going to send the information to my webhooks as well. Okay, so question in the chat, does this apply to access switches as well, like the T85 series? If the access switch, let's see. The access switch, I don't think adds into Milestone as its own hardware, but you may be able to still get an event in there through another mechanism. I'd have to explore that one. I don't have an access switch here to play with, but in that situation, what I'd look at is one, can we add the switch to Milestone? If not, we still need to get an event from the switch into Milestone. So can we set up a TCP or HTTP message, a clear text message from the switch of this event happened, maybe something SNMP like that we send into Milestone's generic events or user-defined events. And in that case, we can use that as the pass-through to get the event into Milestone. Once we have the event into Milestone, then we're just going to use that event as our triggering action, as our trigger, okay? So we would select that on that first step. So in this case, we've got cameras offline. We've scoped that to the areas that we need. We're going to finish out our rule and hit OK. Now I am going to trigger a camera offline. So the easiest way I can do this is I'm just going to change the username that Milestone is trying to use to talk to this camera. Before I do this though, there's one other element I need to point out. And if you are excessively annoyed by camera offline emails, this is really going to be important to you. On the general page of the options window, there's this very bottom line that says ignore device communication errors if communication is reestablished before. Most systems, this defaults to 0 seconds. So Milestone, they're taking the most protective, most conservative approach here. If a device goes offline, even for a split of a second, Milestone's going to say, hey, that device went offline. And then the device comes back online. Okay. And so if you have, a network maybe where a segment of your network or part of your network has some instability, that could be from, dirty uplinks. That could be from your uplinks are overloaded, so you're dropping packets, a whole bunch of different things. You might find some benefit even just coming and setting this to 1 second or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, whatever. It can go all the way up to 5 minutes. I wouldn't suggest that though, because the camera will have to be offline for 5 minutes before Milestone says, hey, this camera's offline. It's going to ignore it up until that point. My sweet spot, probably, 5 seconds is where I tend to leave mine. So this camera will have to be offline for 5 seconds before we get the notification. So I'm going to come back here. We've got the webhook on the right. We've got the email with email and webhook into Teams on the left. And I'm going to hit apply. Milestone has now lost connection to that camera, and we'll see the let's see here, that was before, so any minute now we should see this come in, unless I did not have that rule enabled. Let's double check. Yep, camera's offline, communication error, all cameras. There we go. Let's come back. Here it is. System event. The camera that went offline was this Lobby Healthcare, the Access 9307 LVE. It's attached to this recording server, XProt1, Rec1, and in Teams, here's the webhook that came into Teams. So again, webhooks are fast. They come in fast. I got that really instant notification that something happened. We'll get here in a moment. The next one, though, the email saying that the camera has gone offline. And I want to show you how the attachment functions in there. Let's see, what can we look at while we wait for that to happen? So again, on the webhook, you'll notice that there's no image attachment there. And that's not just my JSON cutting it off, because if we look at the raw data, there's no embedded image in this data. One thing you might have a discussion with your IT department, with the guys that maybe run your mailboxes, your email, is say, hey, if I give you the IP address of the server that's sending these notifications, can we whitelist that so that it doesn't get held up by any kind of delay or filtering, so that the email events notifications out of our system become faster? That is something that I would say most email administrators do have some capability of doing. How easy that is to do is going to depend on how they've got their policies and structures set up, but there should be some capacity there. So again, we're doing this live. Email's taking a little longer than I would like. So we'll move on, but we'll come back to that email when it does come in. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn that camera back on so that we can use it for some other things. All right. And we will move on for now, just a moment. Let me make sure I didn't get that coming in. Okay. So that's the email the notification for a camera offline. We looked at the hardware method of doing that, not necessarily the recommended way. We've looked at the device communication error doing that. That's probably the preferred way. If you come back to my rules, we'll see that I have one for cameras offline, and then I have one for speakers offline. We could change this to say non-camera devices. But in this case, all I have is speakers, so I just did that. It's the exact same rule. Communication error on the device. I just scoped it to the speakers only devices because there's no camera on them. And we get the rest of the rule from there on out. Okay. Let's start thinking outside of the box a little bit now. So what we've looked at so far, recording servers, cameras offline, those are like system type events. There's a whole bunch of those that you can build out. You can get a notification if the RAM on your servers is if you're running out of free space on the hard drives, if your RAM's running too high, CPU's running too high. You could really build out a lot of notifications here. In real world practicality of some of those, maybe not quite so useful. But I mean, ones that would be notification for example, if my recording server storage, maybe my archive is offline, maybe there's something going on with my initial tier 1 storage. Getting those notifications that, hey, I'm not recording or I'm losing recordings would critical rules to set up. Those, again, they're just going to be in that event trigger. For specifically, if we look at the recording servers, like the archive unavailable, archive not finished, database deleting recordings before retention time, retention size. These would be good ones to set up and kind of play with, so we can just be more aware of what's going on with our system. All right, so for the time though that we have left, I want to look at some other scenarios. Maybe call them a little more fun scenarios. First one I want to look at is, how do we get a notification if there's a vehicle parked on a fire lane? All right, we've covered the AOA aspect of this in the past, so I don't want to dig into that part too heavily, but this is a camera with Access Object Analytics capabilities. So this particular one is an ARTPEC 8. It is a 4 sensor, and so I've got scenarios running on 2 of those sensors, 3 scenarios across 2 sensors. And what we're looking at is scenario 1, which is a object in area with a time factor to it. So, vehicle parked on a curb, maybe you'd say, I only want a notification if they've been there for more than, 30 seconds or a minute. Okay, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. So you can set that how you want. All right, and so we use this as the trigger into Milestone. What that looks like is we have to go to our device. So we'll find that 3737. Here it is. Expand out the devices for it. Here's the lab wall. We have to add the events that we want. In particular, this is the device 2 scenario 1. Okay, if you're not clear where that comes from, we'll come back here. So it's this scenario 1 and it's camera 2, so I know Milestone's going to say device 2, still scenario 1 though. So object analytics, device 2, scenario 1. Rising is the start of that event, falling is the end of that event. So we have to have those in our event list. Milestone is going to ignore that event until it shows up as one of these in the list tied to that specific device. All right, so we have that there. Then for a rule, again, we're only interested in the notification aspect of this. So here's my rule, vehicle on red curb. So we are performing an action on that specific device 2 scenario 1 event from this camera. So we take think of these as a category, the type of event, the category of event, device 2 scenario 1, from this camera. And we want to send the notification to, in this case, we said Teams. images and sound from the device on which the event occurred, and we're going to also send the same data to webhooks. So there's the rule. If we come back over here to, let's go back and grab this guy and this guy, pull that back over. I'll have this up. You guys can actually see the event happening. So I'm gonna probably crash into my box there, and we'll stop the car right there. You'll see the time ticker kicking up, you know, on the vehicle. So we're going from 0 seconds to 10 seconds. Once that 10 seconds hits, there's the event that fires into Milestone. Milestone now generates that event. There is the webhook. We'll see it here as well. So here's the raw webhook. It's the Object Analytics Device 2 Scenario 1 from the lobby wall. Here is the webhook here. And we still haven't gotten that email from the other one, so my guess is I got rate limited on my email sends on that. So, but what I'll do is I'll scroll down to last night. Here we go. That's the door forced open. I can show you what this looked like when I played with it last night. Maybe I didn't have that one. Let's see, where are we at on timestamps? This is still this morning. Okay, here we go. Notification, vehicle on red curb. So here's the email. Email was triggered by, attachments are from the rule name, the device on which the event occurred, the hardware, the recording server. Now I have the access control like in here because I'm using this same notification profile for multiple things. But we there's no access control tied to this event, so that just shows up blank. So again, this just illustrates I can use one notification profile as a template for multiple different types of scenarios. But here's the email. We've got the vehicle parked there. You know, if this was exterior, you know, corner of a building, watching the fire lane of the building, now your security team who gets these notifications goes, hey, I need to go check out what's going on here. I need to dispatch somebody to go and tell that vehicle to move or write a ticket, whatever it might be. Here it is here. Actually did come in, so there's the one that we just did. You'll notice, so the time difference here, 11:18:25 a.m., that was the event time. Email was 11:19, so it was about a minute delayed from the webhook. All right. Now, if we wanted to build on this, we're already doing the email, we're already doing the notifications. Now, at the beginning, I mentioned that there's some out-of-the-box thinking ways to notify. You know, these are still technically notifications, but maybe not something so common as to what we immediately think of. So we're gonna keep using this vehicle. Let me get my car out of the no parking zone here. Okay. All right. We're gonna build on this. So what are some other things that are maybe thinking outside of the box that we could add to this as a notification? Well, we have access D4100s or D4200s. So we have strobes that we can set off. We have alarm tones that we can play, and we have speakers with messages that we can play. Those are technically also notifications, right? If you have a security office, maybe the security office needs to be made aware that some kind of an event has happened. And so we'll build out, you know, we'll use this example and we'll keep building it so that we can see what that looks like. And then, oh, I can also show you a door forced open. We'll do that one last, I think. So, okay. So to this notification rule, all I'm going to add is some additional elements. We have to kind of define what those are first. So starting from the beginning, come here. Here's my D4100. We have to create a profile of what this D4100 is going to do. So in this case, we're saying that it is going to pulse at a medium speed with high brightness, and we're going to make it red. And we're going to do that 3 cycles. In combination with this, we're also going to do a soft triple beep alarm, and we're going to do that medium volume and 4 cycles. So we've defined our preset, and I'll use, on the device it's called a profile. I'm going to also call it a preset, and you'll see why in a minute. So we have that defined in this. So now we're going to jump over to the Milestone. So if you have Access Optimizer installed, this adds some really easy features for adding, I'll say it this way, for interfacing the D4100s, D4200s, and speakers into your Milestone system. And it does so by adding this Access Actions. So this is underneath Rules and Events at the bottom below Webhooks. There's an Access Actions. So this is where we define our preset. So on our D4100 Siren Strobe, we're going to say, let me pick the one, this guy, was it? Yes. So when you add a new preset, basically you select the devices that you want this to happen on. It's going to tell you a list of the common profiles between those devices. And so this is on the lobby D4100, and we're going to do that restricted profile, or the restricted vehicle profile that we looked at. And it gives us a summary down below of what that is. Once you have that preset defined, now in my rules, when I come to edit rule, I'm going to scroll down. You'll see that there's this section where things start with access and then a command. So we want to, this one is start or stop a profile on Strobe Siren, and then we select our preset. So this one was the preset. It was this guy here, restricted vehicle on one device. We can add that. Okay. We're going to do the same thing with an audio message. Now we build that the same way. So here's my speaker. I used a tool called 11 Labs. It's an online text-to-speech AI tool. So I typed in the message. I had it generate the audio file that I wanted to. I picked the voice. You can change the tone, a couple different things on there. So I get an audio file. I upload that to my speaker. And from there, we do the same thing. In Milestone, we use Access Actions to generate a preset. And now inside of the rule, we're going to say play audio clip preset. So I can select my preset. And it was this vehicle fire zone on one speaker. And so now I've added 2 additional elements to that rule. Okay. Now I'm going to come here and let's see. Yes, we'll use that one. And actually, we'll come back to that one as well. Let me grab. I'm going to grab another camera here because I want you guys to be able to see the Siren Strobe going off, the D4100 going off. Lobby, and we'll look at this healthcare one because it sees that Siren Strobe is up here on the roof next to the speaker. So those are we're going to use that Siren Strobe, and we're going to use this speaker over here. And you can see the car there kind of in the background. We'll leave the 2 view up so that we get both sides. And lab wall, this one. And let me bump this up to the stream 1 so we get the overlay in it. All right, and let's see what happens. So driving the car forward. You guys have no idea how hard this is to do with the delay in the camera system. So there's our vehicle. It's sitting there. We can see the timer clicking up on it. Okay. We've got the webhook here. We'll watch for the webhook to come in. Current time is 11:27. There's the webhook. So it's that same scenario. And we should get here. The milestone event did not fire off. Did I not save it? Did I miss something? Oh, I didn't finish yet. Silly me. Finish. All right, you gotta see me drive again now, unfortunately. Whoops. Go back to there. Okay. Get that out of the way. I'll just push the box out of the way. Okay. And back in we go. And we'll stop it there. Now that that's saved, now we'll get the rest of the message. Wait for that 10 seconds to time out. Okay. Check Milestone for alarm. So here's the red light flashing. We get the light, we got the tone, and then we got the audible, there's a vehicle parked in a fire zone, check Milestone for an alarm, is what it said. And you saw that happen on, maybe, I don't know if you could hear the audio or not, but you could see here on our waveform that comes up with our Access healthcare camera, we can see that audio was there in the room. Okay, now the message told us to check our Milestone alarm. So I do have an alarm defined based on this event. So I can come and I can select, oops, not double click. I can come and select my alarm. And here is that event, so I can see the video tied to it. I can run that video backwards. We can see exactly what's going on with that event. So now my operators have an easy reference to see this happened. Here it is. What am I going to do? I'm going to dispatch somebody. I had the tone, the strobe went off, the message played. It brought my awareness to that there was something going on. I got the email. I got the webhook. So many different options in how that works. And now, one thing about the webhooks is the webhooks can be used to automate a process as well. So the webhook doesn't just have to be this thing that comes in to Teams or to something else. It can be sent over to another system. So it can be a mechanism whereby we make kind of, a quasi integration. And so you got options there on what you do with them. But here, remember we said 3 emails. So here's one email there, or sorry, 3 images. So we have one image, the next image, and the next image. And so you can see the progression of that as it goes. Okay, last scenario that I came up with, just to kind of show you if there's any other ones you want to look at. We do have some time, but I'll show you this next one. So drop in the chat what you've got on your mind. Okay, access control. So again, I have things happening when doors are first open in my access control. What I want to look at specifically in this is I want a notification when I have a door that's forced open. So in this instance, perform an action on, and we'll actually jump into this once it opens here. These always are a little slower than I like to open. Of course, it always feels slower when you're in front of an audience waiting for it. Not so slow when you're just doing your normal work. Come on now. Okay, here we go. So these are our events, remember? So we've got that hardware, device, external. When you have your access control integrated into Milestone, you get this additional access control section, and we're going to deal with either categories or specific event types. In this case, I'm going to do a category. So I have a category for door forced. So when I get an event that is part of this category, from what? Okay, I can say only from these doors. So I could say my IDF door, let's say exterior doors, we could do that. Or we could just say any door that I have enabled in Milestone, give me that notification on. Okay, same thing for the rest of it. Send notification to Teams, images and sound from the devices. Now here it says devices from metadata, so the verbiage is a little different, but it's essentially the same thing. Send event information to the webhook. So we'll do both of those and hit finish. All right, so on this door forced open. Now I'm not actually going to force the door open. What I am going to do though is just change the programming to make it look like it's forced open. Let's make sure we have the rule, it's enabled, we saved it, and come back here. So we've got our webhook. We'll get the, so this is another one previous. We'll see, then let's come up to the top here. Okay. This is saying camera's offline. Apparently I have a camera offline. Oh, yes. That one is cell connected, so it's going to come and go. So yeah, this is another good thing to point out. So this is a cell connected camera that comes back into my Milestone. Cellular connection can come and go. And so you might want to exclude that from your all cameras, or maybe not an issue. Scope that group to however you need it. All right, access control. So for that, I'm going to come here, scroll up to the top on both of those, and I'm going to say DSM. What I'm going to do to make this trigger is I'm just going to toggle, I'm going to flip the state of the door contact in programming so that it thinks that the door is forced open. Okay, so there it is, the access control. You guys can't see this. The access control, though, just defined that door as forced open. We should see those events. Here's the webhook. Came from my access control system, door forced open. There's the door. Here's the workflow, or the webhook coming into Teams. So same thing, GTC lab door, door forced open, and then relevant details there. And in probably about just a minute, we'll get the email to come in. Now we will actually get, no, in this one we'll only get one email because I only have one camera associated with the door. If we were looking at a different door that has 1 or 2 or 3 cameras associated with that door, we're going to get an email per camera for the one event. So, but here is the door. It's this door right here with the box in front of it. I set these cameras to record continuously just simply for the fact that we can get the images since I'm not actually out there moving around with the door. So, okay, well, that's hopefully been some useful information about Milestone notifications, some of the pros and cons, caveats, just things to be aware of. There's a lot of capability there. There's a lot of flexibility, but it doesn't always necessarily present in a very clear way. So if there are specific scenarios that you're needing assistance with, we're happy to help. We've got a support team that's extremely well versed in Milestone. They know these systems ins and out, and so reach out to a support individual here at Stone Security if you need to, or if you need to, we can get in touch with Milestone and talk about different ways. But or there are other integrations as well, third-party integrations that might expand or change some of the notification capabilities of Milestone too. But that's all that I've got for you today. Thanks for attending. We hope to see you soon, both at GSX. If you're there, come by, swing by, come say hi. We'll be, Stone Security has a booth there this year. We'll be in booth 347. We'd love to see you, as well as come hang out at Techtober. Whether you're in person, that'd be best. If you can't make it in person, we'll see you online. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you at Techtober. Thanks.